Greetings, fellow traveler. Tired of the troubles of your journey? Here, take a seat by the fire and let me spin you a grim tale of a dark future where there is only war. Today, I shall tell you of the few named Tyranid characters that exist. Legendary Tyranid creatures that have gained an infamous reputation for their unique and terrifying nature. Despite the Tyranids being all part of the Hive Mind with no individuality, there are some unique Tyranids that have their own distinct features and abilities that separate them from other bioforms. These unique creatures are usually part of the Hive Mind's experiments to test out a new mutation or bioform before producing them en masse, and let's just say the results are never disappointing. Without further ado, let's dive into the lore. Deathleaper is a unique Tyranid lictor spawned by Hive Fleet Leviathan. Like any other lictor, Deathleaper is an invisible assassin that strikes with lightning speed before vanishing into thin air, leaving a bloody massacre in its wake. But what makes Deathleaper so special is that it was specifically created by the Hive Mind as a terror weapon. Deathleaper has an instinctive understanding on how to spread fear and terror across entire populations, using its natural abilities for stealth and infiltration to assassinate key targets to sow panic and paranoia in a given world before the Hive fleet arrives. The first contact with Deathleaper was upon the Imperial world of St. Casperlan in 997 M41. To carry out its task of terrorizing the population, Deathleaper knew it couldn't simply assassinate the spiritual leader of the world, Cardinal Salem, as it would only create a martyr and redouble the faith and morale of the population, bolstering their defenses and making it more difficult for the Tyranids when the invasion came. So instead of assassinating the Cardinal, it set out to torment him and break his mind. Deathleaper infiltrated the Cardinal's bunker undetected, slaughtering his advisors and bodyguards in front of him, leaving only the Cardinal alive, covered in the blood and guts of his closest allies. However, this would not be the end of his torment, only the beginning of his psychological torture. Deathleaper would go on to repeat the carnage for 10 days. Every day, security measures were increased, more bodyguards were assigned, and everything possible was done to protect the Cardinal from the vile creature that stalked him. However, Deathleaper was able to circumvent the security measures and defenses every single time, slaughtering everyone in its path, leaving the Cardinal alive to face a gruesome display of brutality. Finally, the Cardinal's mind broke. Knowing that the monstrous alien assassin could eliminate him whenever it wanted was too much torment for his exhausted psyche. The psychological torture of Deathleaper turned the once beloved spiritual leader into a paranoid, delirious man, trembling with terror, who could only think about when the alien assassin would strike next. The Cardinal's madness killed the morale of the planetary defense forces, having lost all confidence in him and any hope his presence once inspired. By the time the Hive fleet arrived, terror and fear reigned over St. Casperlan, and its defenders, now leaderless and panicked, were easy prey for its maw thanks to the actions of Deathleaper. Thus, Deathleaper proved to be very efficient at plunging an entire population into panic and terror, undermining its defenses and leaving it bereft of leaders capable of mounting a competent defense. The Hive Mind considered this experiment as a success and has since reproduced the Deathleaper en masse, turning it into its own strain of lictor that can accompany other Vanguard Tyranid bioforms into battle to strike terror into the enemy ranks before wiping them out with lightning assaults in a fountain of blood and gore. The Red Terror was a particularly lethal strain of Ravener that appeared 2 standard years before the invasion of Hive Fleet Kraken. This unique and especially large Ravener had a blood-red carapace, several scythe-like blades, and a maw large enough to swallow a man whole. Some survivors of its attack say it's the size of a normal Ravener, others swear it's the size of a Trigon. Luckily, the Imperium has only had one official encounter with the Red Terror on the mining world of Delvan Primus in the eastern fringe of the Imperium for 20 bloody days. The first sign they had of the monstrous creature was a sudden attack. The Red Terror smashed its way through a spaceport, slaughtering 24 Imperial defenders before it could be driven back. The unknown creature would carry out similar attacks over several weeks, slaughtering everyone in its path before retreating to the mining tunnel from which it had emerged while devouring its victims' remains. And just imagine for a moment you're one of those poor sods, working in a mine in the worst conditions possible, cause let's face it, this is the Imperium of Man, and when you're working your arse off on another dull day of labour, suddenly an alien monstrosity emerges from a tunnel and starts tearing your co-workers apart and swallowing them whole. And if by some miracle you manage to survive, every day that passes the beast strikes again, making you wonder if today it's coming for you. Finally, a search and destroy party was put together to put an end to the beast and its rampage. The team entered the mining tunnels determined to put an end to the Xenos monstrosity, but eventually met the same fate as the rest of the Red Terror's victims. After the 20 days of hell that the inhabitants of Delvan lived through, the Red Terror just seemed to disappear. It was never seen again on Delvan Primus, and its whereabouts remained unknown. One day, a giant mining ship fleeing from Delvan arrived on the world of Adri's Hope. It was supposedly carrying refugees, but upon landing, it remained sealed and ominously silent, broadcasting no messages to the surface. Those who investigated the ship in search of answers found a blood-soaked slaughterhouse. Men, women, and children had been mercilessly massacred in the thousands. It was suspected that a breach in the quarantine had allowed a Tyranid organism to enter. However, there was no trace of the Xenos to be found. Thus, the nature and whereabouts of the creature remained a mystery. 3 weeks later, Adri's Hope also became a blood-spattered ruin. After these events, there have been no reported sightings of the Red Terror, or perhaps there have been no survivors to tell the tale. Some Imperial scholars have speculated that perhaps this creature was an experiment of the Hive Mind, a prototype of Morlocks and Trigons to determine their combat abilities before mass producing them. Others speculate that it could have been the first Tyranid Ravener, an experiment of the Hive Mind to create a fast and efficient killing machine that could appear out of nowhere to devour its prey in a single mouthful. While we're at it, why don't we go with another snake-like alien monstrosity? What lies beneath is an exceptionally large Trigon from Hive Fleet Dagon. The first reports of this specimen come from the early days of the Tyranid invasion of the Hive world Castabel during the Aculus Crusade of the Jericho Reach. Security footage confirms that what lies beneath passed through the lower levels of Castabel Hive. Few hours later, a massive explosion occurred in the city's central plasma core, wiping out defenders and Xenos alike. Without power to maintain light, ventilation, water systems, or the city's defenses, the Hive was overrun by the Tyranid swarm. A low-ranking tech priest who survived the explosion was interrogated by the Inquisition and revealed that at the time of the attack, the plasma core was being refitted. Almost on cue, the Trigon dug underneath the Hive city, severing one of the huge pipes that carried the coolant for the power source. Without the coolant, the nuclear fusion escalated exponentially until the reactor exploded. The beast had also perished with the explosion, and it was thought that it couldn't have cut the cable on purpose, as there was no possible way the Xenos could understand the complexity of the plasma reactor. Thus, the Imperials didn't expect this to be a recurring tactic, and it came down to a tragic coincidence. However, a similar incident took place during the Battle of Kredos. The Imperial base commander had violated standard Imperial deployment regulations by placing the Prometheum storage tanks too close to the base. The Prometheum tanks had just been refilled, and the manufacturing cycles of the artillery units had recently been completed. And that's precisely when the Trigon struck, unleashing a massive bioelectrical pulse that set the Promethean tanks ablaze, setting off the artillery shells in a cataclysmic detonation. Hundreds of tanks and their crews, thousands of support personnel, and a crucial resupply facility wiped out in an instant. The loss was a brutal blow to the Imperial forces. The only relief was that at least the Xenos responsible for the attack had also died in the explosion. After the incident, some Imperial analysts noticed the similarities between the Tyranid attacks on Kredos and Castabel. In the following weeks and months, several similar attacks occurred on different worlds and systems, and the pattern became apparent. Reports from survivors and recordings from security systems revealed that this was an exceptionally large Trigon that somehow was able to target Imperial stores of volatile substances and tunnel under them to detonate them in a devastating suicide attack. Thus, the beast was named What Lies Beneath. So basically, what this Trigon does is find something that will go boom in the enemy camp or fortress, dig a tunnel directly under it, sprout out from the ground yelling Hive Mind Akbar, and pop goes the Trigon. However, What Lies Beneath doesn't have the luxury of meeting 42 virgins once it goes to heaven, because the Hive Mind always brings it back to carry on its explosive work. As the investigation continued, it revealed that in all its attacks, the Trigon was always accompanied only by broods of Hormagaunts. No other Tyranid bioform was part of its attacks. It would seem the Hive Mind was minimizing its losses and making the most of the biomass used in the attacks of What Lies Beneath. The Trigon's attack caused panic throughout the Crusades' ranks. Some commanders even reduced the fuel reserves to a minimum, kept their volatile resources inside armoured transports, or used spare armour plates for tank repair as additional armour under their most critical facilities. Analysis of the available footage of the creature along with the survivors' reports don't reveal any identifying features of What Lies Beneath other than being a slightly larger kind of Trigon, making it that more difficult to identify, and it has never been seen taking part in conventional battles, only emerging to carry out one of its devastating attacks. In addition, survivors' accounts of seeing the beast die in a great ball of fire have contributed to create the rumour that the Xenos beast is immortal, always rising from the ashes to carry out its next attack. The Hive Mind seems to be satisfied with this strain of Trigon, and each time it dies, it respawns it so it can strike anew. Unlike other legendary Tyranid creatures, the following isn't unique for its size, its jaws, or its deadly claws. In fact, its physical body is quite weak. Its true power resides in its terrifying psychic might. The Doom of Malan'tai is a very unique zoanthrope, specially adapted to feed on the psychic energy and the very souls of its victims, draining their vital essence, leaving behind only empty husks. In fact, the name, the Doom of Malan'tai, refers to both the Eldar legend about the fall of Craftworld Malan'tai and the creature responsible for its death. As it happens, the Eldar fleets of Craftworld Malan'tai set out to destroy Hive Fleet Naga, but before it was completely destroyed, a wounded bioship managed to unleash mycetic spores upon the Craftworld, unloading hordes of Xenos horrors upon its surface. The Eldar of Malan'tai focused on destroying the larger and seemingly more lethal Xenos that invaded their home, unaware that the real threat was elsewhere. Thus, the Doom of Malan'tai ran rampant, consuming Eldar souls, and with the Eldar being a highly psychic species, the creature's power increased exponentially with each soul it devoured. Eventually, the Doom of Malan'tai reached the Infinity Circuit, the psychic core where all the souls of the Craftworld's Eldar rest in an artificial afterlife. The Zoanthrope feasted on their souls, raising its power to near invincibility. It crushed Eldar bodies with a mere thought, turning them into a paste of viscera and blood, crushing Wraithguards and destroying towers of the Wraithbone with cataclysmic bolts of psychic energy. Having reached such a level of psychic power, the Eldar were hopeless against the Doom of Malan'tai. Since the destruction of the Craftworld, the Doom of Malan'tai has not been seen again. Several years later, a group of Grey Knights found the Craftworld drifting through the void, reduced to a cold, lifeless husk, with no trace of the creature that had caused its demise. The Parasite of Mortex is a winged Tyranid creature, the result of another of the Hive Mind's experiments, evolved through the genome of the Tyranid warrior. Its name hails from the world where this fearsome Xenos was first sighted, the fortress world of Mortex, one of the best defended worlds in the entire Ultima Segmentum, with fortresses and bastions covering its entire surface. Mortex became besieged by Hive Fleet Kraken. Thanks to its formidable defences, the Imperials managed to resist the Tyranid swarms for 10 days. However, on the 10th day, the Imperial Guard forces sighted an unknown winged Tyranid bioform. Suddenly, the creature dived into the trenches, stabbing the guardsmen with its tail at lightning speed. At first, it appeared that the wounds inflicted by the creature weren't lethal. Moments later, its victims died devoured from within by ripper swarms that emerged from their bodies, bursting organs and flesh in a shower of blood. Apparently, the winged creature had implanted them with Ripper Swarm parasites that matured in moments to devour their hosts from within. Thus, the creature was named as the Parasite of Mortex, and survivors of its attacks recounted the horrific death of its victims. Now, I don't know about you, but this Tyranid reminds me of something, because it seems like it's been inspired by the Alien franchise, because essentially it's just a giant flying facehugger. I mean, implanting humans with a parasite/embryo that will shortly after mature into an alien that will burst from the host's body is just straight out of Alien. And although it might seem like a cheap knockoff, I believe that this kind of inspiration to create new Tyranid bioforms is the way to go. Tyranids were always kind of inspired by Alien, and creating new interesting bioforms with this kind of inspiration, for me, just works. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get back to the lore. 2 weeks after its appearance on the battlefield, the planet was overrun by swarms of hundreds of thousands of Rippers that consumed everything in their path. Mortex managed to send an astropathic transmission before its demise, warning the Imperium of the existence of this new and terrifying Tyranid organism. However, since the Battle of Mortex, the creature hasn't been sighted again. Apparently, the Hive Mind is still considering if this experiment was a success. As if normal Carnifex weren't enough, Old One-Eye is a unique Tyranid Carnifex with the ability to regenerate from mortal wounds. When High Fleet Behemoth invaded the world of Calth in Ultramar, Old One-Eye was like any other Carnifex, smashing Leman Russ tanks apart and tearing up infantry in its path with its massive claws. However, the Carnifex was eventually felled by a shot from a plasma pistol that went through its right eye and into its brain. Decades after the Tyranid assault on Calth, a band of smugglers found the frozen corpse of the Xenos beast and thought they could make a good profit if they could sell it. So they set out to melt the ice to transport the Carnifex elsewhere. When the ice melted, the Carnifex's mortal wounds healed in an instant, and Old One-Eye rose from its slumber, slaughtering the smugglers. Although it managed to heal from the rest of its wounds, for some reason the scar on its right eye never regenerated, giving it its unique appearance and its nickname of Old One-Eye. Isolated from the influence of the Hive Mind, Old One-Eye reverted to a feral state, reduced to an animal instinct of killing anything in its path. Other lesser creatures such as termagants and gene sealers that still remained on Calth rallied under the dominant presence of Old One-Eye and together carried out a series of raids on various populations, slaughtering them mercilessly. Scout Sergeant Telion of the Ultramarines answered Calth's distress call and along with his scouts gave chase to the beast to put an end to its rampage. Once they found Old One-Eye, Telion struggled to penetrate its armor, and the furious attacks of the Xenos beast took out several of his scouts. Finally, Telion managed to land a shot in the ravaged eye socket of the Carnifex, who writhed in pain and collapsed down a cavernous ravine. Telion went into the ravine to find its corpse, but never managed to find it. And so the fate of Old One-Eye remained a mystery for the time being, until several battle reports described a Carnifex with the same features, sowing death and destruction across Ultramar and beyond. If these Carnifexes are indeed Old One-Eye, according to reports and rumours, the beast has died at least a dozen times, and somehow always manages to come back to life. Apparently, Old One-Eye was another experiment of the Hive Mind in rapid cell regeneration, and with the arrival of Hive Fleet Leviathan, it seems that the Hive Mind has recovered this mutation and incorporated it into all Carnifexes, making them much more difficult to kill by being able to regenerate from their wounds. However, the only one to fully come back from death is Old One-Eye, and it also seems that the Hive Mind has preserved the genetic pattern of the creature to be able to spawn it when necessary, which would explain how it's able to travel from one system to another and why it appears as part of different Hive fleets. The last time a Carnifex matching the features of Old One-Eye was sighted was upon the world of Tartarus during the Cryptus campaign, when Hive Fleet Leviathan invaded the Cryptus system. Old One-Eye resisted all heavy weapons fire from the Cadians and managed to destroy the shield generators that protected the planet from the system's violent solar storms, which eventually wiped out the Imperial forces. Another curiosity about Old One-Eye is that apparently there's a gene sealer cult that worships it as their deity. The Behemoid subcult worships Old One-Eye to the point of ritual scarring and even gouging out their right eye in homage to Old One-Eye, whom they consider a herald of their Xenos god Behemoth. The Swarmlord is perhaps the most powerful and cunning Tyranid bioform that exists, the Hive Mind's ultimate creation. The Swarmlord is a unique strain of Hive Tyrant, more powerful and vastly more intelligent. Like other Hive Tyrants, the Swarmlord is essentially immortal, being able to retain its past memories after death once it's spawned anew by the Hive Mind. However, there's only one Swarmlord at a time, making it a completely unique creature that has existed for eons, accumulating a vast combat experience through its many lifetimes, and has been responsible for the extinction of countless civilizations. The Swarmlord is the Hive Mind's most accomplished commander, being granted more autonomy from the Hive Mind than any other Tyranid creature and able to think independently to draw its own strategies and tactical decisions. Thus, the Swarmlord is spawned to deal with the most resistant enemies when all other strategies have failed, commanding the Tyranid swarms with its millennia of battle experience. So strong is its connection to the Hive Mind that the Swarmlord can transcend physical limitations of space to manifest among any Hive fleet. Apart from its great bulk and resistant carapace, the Swarmlord wields 4 bone swords infused with disruptive bioelectrical power that can tear through force fields and adamantium like a hot knife through butter. Its powerful weapons, strength and speed added to its vast intelligence makes the Swarmlord one of the most lethal Xenos in the entire galaxy that has taken part in several crucial battles, such as the Battle for Macragge where it managed to defeat Marneus Calgar himself in singular combat, Octarius leading the Tyranid swarms against the Greenskin hordes, or the devastation of Baal where it was slain by Chapter Master Dante himself. The Swarmlord remains the most fearsome Tyranid bioform to date, appearing on battlefields all over the galaxy, commanding the swarms with its tactical genius to overcome the enemy's defenses and consume another planet to appease the Hive Mind's endless hunger. Apart from these creatures, there are also other named Tyranids such as the Hive Tyrant known as King Nephilim or the Genestealer Patriarch known as Specimen X. However, these creatures don't have as much lore and, in my humble opinion, don't have such fascinating features or stories as the rest of the unique Tyranids we've covered throughout the video. However, as you can see, the Hive Mind is always experimenting to perfect its creations, spawning singular Xenos abominations with unique abilities. And if the Hive Mind deems its experiments as a success, it will incorporate their genetic templates into its swarms to mass produce them and unleash new Xenos horrors upon the galaxy that will leave a trail of bloody corpses in their wake. Well, there you have it, the legendary Tyranid bioforms. The stories of these Tyranid creatures are as unique as they are terrifying. Perhaps in time the Hive Mind might spawn new unique creatures that warrant a second part of this video, but for now these are the most worthy of mention, at least in my opinion. My personal favourites will always be the Red Terror and Old One-Eye, which is probably because I've had their miniatures since I was a kid. In any case, which ones are your favourites? Leave them in the comments. Anyway, that's enough from me for now. If you liked the video, you know the drill. Leave a like and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching, and I hope we meet again in the next video.